Amazing cars that have one huge weakness. Hello guys, welcome back to MIA Luxury Cars. And here are the 9 great cars with one huge weakness. Let's get started. Audi S8. A great car with the most annoying thing is the Audi S8. Yes, it's a masterclass in luxury limo. And from the inside, it's a sight to behold. And the reason it looks so great is because of all those lovely screens in the center console. The same center console that controls every function of the car, and with that comes an insane piece of fingerprint real estate. Unfortunately, rather than containing the fingerprints to just those screens, Audi poured gasoline on the fire and surrounded the entire area in an almost communal amount of piano block. Unlike Mercedes or BMW, you can't option it out. In fact, the only thing you can do is add more piano block. And despite the Audi S8 being the one that we've highlighted here, a lot of new Audis actually have this problem. And if you even look at the interior, you fingerprint it, it's an NSA agent wet dream. Fortunately, if you can afford an Audi S8, you can probably afford a microfiber cloth as well. For GT500. This is probably one of the most impressive cars. Dynamically sensational, blisteringly fast, and it looks fantastic, and you might have actually seen us race it against the Camaro Z011LE and the Hellcat Red Eye with Jason Camisa and Randy Paus. The delay not even close, and yes, behind the scenes, Randy himself actually had a difficult timing the launch, and that's because there's a delay built into the launch controls. So when you lift your foot off the brake while the throttle is mashed, it doesn't go straight away. It's obviously a programming issue in an otherwise almost perfect car. But fortunately, it's for a very specific situation, which is why it finds itself quite low down in our list of weaknesses. Cadillac CT5. It has some fantastic attributes, but the flaw is the transmission and drivetrain. Great chassis, incredibly, comfortable seats, great driving position, and really quite an upmarket interior. Basically, it's a really good start for the CT5. It just feels held back. Assume that the Cadillac is intentionally leaving space between this car and their V cars, and now their black wing V8 car. But it feels like the car had a whole bottle of red and spent 3 hours in the jacuzzi. Put it this way, there's a lot of competition for base models nowadays, and we just feel that Cadillac could have sharpened the knife a little bit. LC500. This is a car that is beautiful, and it's beautifully crafted, and it's a wonderful gland touring coupe. But we can't recommend it to anyone because of its infotainment. I mean, you have no chance to change the radio station while driving, and when we say you, we're talking about you guys who are like 18 and 20 sitting in your underwear in your parents' basement. The 65-year-old people who are intended to buy this car, they're going to die in a fiery crush without a question if they're trying to change a radio station. So it's really a shame that such a well-engineered, wonderful car can be complete failure just because of its infotainment. But the fact is, we can't recommend that car for fear of safety for the people buying it. Toyota 86 BRZ. First off, it's an amazing car. Fun light, naturally aspirated, and that's for good reason it's light. It's fun, and it's one of the very few affordable new manual cars out there. But it's not without some issues. We're not going to get into stuff like the engine cricket and certain quirks like that. We're talking about a design issue. Call it header design and or emissions regulation. But there's a significant drop in torque when you hit about 3,000 RMP, which makes it a bit annoying to drive around at slow speeds, or if you're trying to do a really aggressive pull, it's not perfect. For whatever reason, when Toyota and Subaru redid the interior of this car a few years ago, they actually added a handy-dandy little graphic so you can see the torque dip and constantly be reminded of how annoying it is. Thankfully, a set of headers and a tune will fix this right up, but out of the box, it's kind of only Achilles heel to to a pretty much perfect affordable sports car, Audi RS3. The RS3, like many Audis, is fantastic looking, has a solid interior, a great ride, and in this case, a legendary sounding 5-cylinder engine that sounds like this. But its greatest enemy is the understeer. When it comes to a corner, even though Audi fitted wider tires to the front of the car than they did to the back, and even though you'll hear people say it can send 100% of its power to the rear wheels, which it can in theory, but not in practice. It still just blows on in a corner. Basically, while cars like, I don't know, the Miata or the Supra can do this, or even the Tesla Model 3 or the Type R can do this, the RS3's front axle doesn't grip very well due to the placement of the engine and the all-wheel drive system, which means that it can catch you off guard. The thing is, if you're just living with it, the RS3 is brilliant. If it was between that and say a BMW M2 competition, I'd take the RS3 for the city. We just wish that Audi's top-of-the-line little performance car was more dynamically inclined when you really push it. Mercedes C-Class. It is fun to drive, comfortable, looks great, and as always, a bastion of luxury. As long as you don't touch it. Yeah, there's some creaking. Things like CLS53 with that incredible mild hybrid AMG engine, or the AMG GT63S, which goes full beast mode. But even lower in the Mercedes range, cars like the C300 and the A-Class have really impressed us. However, press on the interior panels, and some of these Mercedes, and while their rivals don't creak of all, the Mercedes seems to creak all the live long day. Kind of like every time you hug an elderly family member, something somewhere cracks and you don't know why, even though everything is probably fine. You always have it in the back of your mind. You don't have to touch anything and fear that it creaks and sounds cheap. It makes the whole experience of being inside one of them kind of delicate. Mustang GT. This is one issue with the Mustang that we can't quite let go of: the steering. The Mustang does feel direct and sharp, but it's very numb. There isn't any communication from the road. It's a bit off-center, and then the weight that builds when you turn into a corner feels kind of gooey and unnatural, which for piddling around town isn't actually much an issue. It just means it's harder to control at the limit. And on our top of the list, we have Toyota Supra. The 4-cylinder has a whole bunch of questions surrounding it, like what does it go up against at that $400 US price? The Supra was very fun to drive even if it didn't set the fastest lap time, but does bring us up onto the issue. Anything about 80 kilometers an hour or 55 miles an hour, the buffering becomes so unbelievably insane that you feel like you're going to get knocked out. It's like they never took it for a test drive, and any speed because the buffering starts about 30 miles an hour and it will literally take your face off. And it's a strange omission because you'd have thought if you have Toyota and you were building something from the ground up and it was your baby, then you'd go to great lengths. Thank you for watching.